Hi, my name is Dalton Jensen. I'll be providing you with an overview of a continuity of operations plan, also known as a COOP. COOPs take more time than we have here during this presentation to complete, so I'm just going to go through a little bit of an outline about what it is and how to write one, and then afterwards do a group simulation on the whole entire process, and that way it's a little bit more hands-on. And first thing is I'm going to hand out a terminology guide so that if I use any terms that you don't understand, you'll be able to look them up. Alright, so first off, what is a COOP? Definition is the creation of a strategy through the recognition of threats and risks facing a company with an eye to ensure that personnel and assets are protected and able to function in the event of a disaster. So basically what it's saying is it's just a plan for your company to stay above water if you have some sort of disaster or a large emergency or even an economic turn. Just a plan to keep the business going. Why should a business have one? Just make sure that your business stays solvent and continues to serve their customers or industry. So again, just make sure that you're not going to end up bankrupt or going out of business, and that has a trickle-down effect on your employees, on other companies that you work with, and anyone that has money invested in your company. So move into what each COOP should have for a plan. So your components, you've got your basic plan, and that should have an introduction, which will just be a cover page, then an official announcement of the plan, an approval page, so that's just a list of people that you worked with to create this plan and what their thoughts were on it and who approved of it and what their kind of position is within the company. Then you've got record of changes. This is just writing down and having cataloged all of the suggestions that the group that you worked with to write it made, and whether or not you decided to implement them into your plan. Then a record of distribution. This is just a record of who was involved, who the plan got handed out to before it was initially rolled out to the company as something that you were going to use. Next, you've got your purpose and your scope, and that just sets the foundation of the plan of what entities will be involved in the plan and what their locations are. Next, concept for operations. This is a written document explaining the plan in broad terms and how the plan objectives will be accomplished. Functional annexes focus on critical operational functions and the course of action developed to carry them out. And some of the examples of this: direction, control, and coordination. So this goes through lining out through your plan what direction you want the plan to head in, but then who's going to be in control of writing it, who's going to be in control once it's written of distributing it to people within the company, and then how it's going to get implemented into the system so that everybody that works within the company knows what the plan is and what their role is in it. And coordination, it's just got to make sure that everyone is on the same page, knows what their job is, and that way everything goes smoothly and you make sure that everything in your plan that needs to be accomplished is. Then you got information collection, analysis, and dissemination. And this is just doing your research, figuring out what sort of disaster the area that you're in is most likely to, what disaster you're most likely to incur and what the likelihood of those even happening is. And then analysis, you just got to analyze what's the most important things for your plan, what emergencies you're going to go through, what disasters you're going to have, what economically could hurt you, and you kind of need to put those in order of importance. Communications, that's huge in whatever you're doing, especially when you're working with a large group. This doesn't have necessarily mean like a communication line as far as like telephones or how you're going to communicate with each other. It's more of a plan, a laid out, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, laid out plan basically of like who you need to call if something goes wrong, who do you talk to. And this is, all the way from a base level employee, they need to talk to their boss who needs to move it up the ladder and keep a chain of command through your communications, and that way things don't kind of get brushed off or they don't get communicated to the right people and then nothing happens with them. You got population warnings. That's just how you're going to get your information out to whoever you need to get it out to. It just kind of depends on what sort of company you are or entity, because you may not even be a business per se that's trying to make an income, like emergency management, population warning. You're going to try to figure out how the quickest way to get information to all the people in that community about what is going on. Or if you work at just a retail store, the population warning, the population is just going to be the people that it's affected by, which is going to be your employees and your consumer group. Emergency public information, this is pretty important, and this just kind of goes to like in your building signs for the public about where your emergency exits are, things like that. Or if you work in an industry like construction, you need to make sure that people know what the emergency plan is, and like things like an eye wash station, or where to go seek medical attention if you have it on the job, things like that. Public protection, it's just a plan to, if something does go bad with your entity, how are you going to stop it from harming the public more than it has to with whatever the initial problem was. Mass care, emergency assistance. This again is more into an emergency management standpoint. And this, you really need to have a plan about where you're going to set up for mass trauma, how you're going to get the information out so people know where to go, and who you're going to bring in to man these care facilities. And then with your emergency assistance, you have to have a plan for staying in communication and sending out like EMTs and firefighters where they need to be, things like that. Health and medical services. This is kind of goes into the same thing, but this is more long-term, not short-term disaster or emergency. This is once that's all been kind of handled, where you're going to take people for the long-term recovery of whatever injuries they sustained. And resource management, that is how you're going to like dole out whatever kind of resources that you have, and do it smartly, and also manage them right so that you're not going to use them all up right at the beginning and then not have anything left. And this goes for emergency or just any sort of stock that you have of things, whether you're selling them or whether it's just a consumable item that you're using for your company. You need to manage those properly so that you always have them available. We got hazards, threat, or incident-specific annexes. And these focus on special planning needs generated by the subject hazard. So this is specifically what hazard are you going to occur, or what hazard's going to occur, what are you going to run into. You need to break that down in for each type of hazard, because each sort of major hazard or disaster has its own issues that you have to deal with, and depending on which ones you're vulnerable to, you need to have a plan for each separate one, not just a large kind of overview plan, because that'll get you in trouble if there is a serious emergency. So with that, you need to kind of highlight your specific risks for each of those, and then what areas that could happen in, and then how you're going to get people out of those areas. So you need to start coming up with things like an evacuation route, somewhere that it isn't choked off and it allows a large flow of people to move through fairly quickly. That way you're not just gathering people in a different spot for to get injured. Specify provisions and protocols for warning the public. This is just how you're going to warn the public, what you determine is the best way to get information to them, whether it's social media or large media outlets or radio, sirens, things like that. And just, when you're going to use them, when's the right time. You don't need to be issuing warnings when there's really not that large of a threat in that, because you can cause mass panic and chaos and could end up getting people hurt for no reason. You should also issue out maps or charts, and that just helps people know where the evacuation routes are at. And then maybe some checklists sort of things for the community to have, so they can go through and have their own personal plan about what they need to grab or what route they need to take, or how they need to take that route. Anyways, moving on. Now that we know what our plan should contain, how do we get there? So we got to go through the whole planning process. And this is just a example chart that you can find at FEMA website. This just kind of helps give an idea about what your process, what all the things you need to go through with your process, but this isn't a specific to anything. But step one is just form and collaborate a planning team. So that's just like we talked about before, you gotta identify who the group of people is that you're going to be working with for the majority of this process, and that's the core group is who you're going to stay in contact with all the time, and then they can kind of delegate their portions to other people, other specialists or anything like that they feel is necessary. Then you're going to move on to step two. That's understanding the situation. That's identifying your threats and your hazards, like we talked about, and then assessing the risk that comes with each hazard. And risk is more or less like the frequency that could happen. Just because if something does happen where it could be catastrophic, where the effects of it are catastrophic, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're at high risk for that, because yes, if it does occur, there's going to be a catastrophic event, but the likelihood of it occurring is very rare, so you have to, it's a two-way deal for your risk assessment. And then you got to put priority on the threats and the hazards, which ones are the most likely to occur, and how bad can they be if they do. Step three is determining your goals and objectives. And this is just what do we want in our plan? What's the key to our success through this plan? What are we trying to mitigate or achieve? Either way. And then you just go into your plan development, and this is going to be different for every plan because obviously it just depends on what you're making the plan for, on what your first 3 steps even, the information that you're going to cover in that. Step 5, plan preparation, review, and approval. So this is, you've done all your planning, you've done all your research, now you've put together your plan, basically a first draft of your plan. Now you need to go through and review it, and this is with the whole group, and that way everyone can kind of pick over what each other did. It's new eyes on it, figure out where you, if you made any mistakes, where they're at, and how you can fix them. And then once it's been reviewed and rewritten several times, then you can approve your plan. So then at that point it's pretty much done, and all you have to do is implement it into your company or the group that you're working with or whoever the plan was developed for. And then, so for this next couple slides here, it's just a sample plan that I did for Sportsman's Warehouse, and it's pretty thick and heavy, so I'm just going to quickly kind of run through it and cover the highlights, and I'll be handing out the completed plan for you to look over while I'm doing this, and then that way you can kind of get a little bit more into detail, and then we'll go into the group activity after that about actually writing your own plan, but you'll be able to reference this doing that as well. Okay, so this is just initially a table of contents. Everybody knows what table of contents is, just so you can find what you're looking for. Executive summary, it's just a quick kind of overview of what I'm going to be going over throughout this entire plan. You got your introduction and your purpose, like I said before, what the purpose of what I'm trying to mitigate or why I'm creating this plan. Applicability and scope, that's just going to cover what's in the plan, what it can be applied to, what I made in my plan, each separate kind of hazard and what the risks are and everything like that. This is just kind of my activation relocation. If the plan does go in effect, what needs to happen. And this can only, it doesn't just have to be evacuation. This could also be if something happens to where, like, the main command center, if you will, of your team that's going to be doing this evacuation or trying to, save people from this disaster. If where they're at becomes hazardous, where are they going to relocate to be able to continue working? This just goes through an entire list of how to alert people, the types of notifications to use, when to use them, and when throughout this process of warnings do we start implementing the next stages of the plan. These are emergency response group. This just goes through so the people working at the store know what they can just look at it through, go through and train them on this, but whatever their position is, what the duties of that position are, and then who they need to answer to when they don't have the knowledge to be doing that. This goes for a little bit bigger scale. This is inter-company stuff, moving between stores, alerting each other about what's going on, alerting your main headquarters or offices. This goes through your file records, everything, from sales and all of that, what's going to happen to those, how important is it to make sure that those are saved before trying to get at evacuate the building, anything like that. And then you go into your reconstruction. So this is the plan for what happened after the thing is done, or after the whatever incident occurred. How you're going to rebuild, relocate, what you're going to do. Is it even an option to rebuild? Plan for testing and training. You can always you can talk about it, but if you don't train your employees, when the time comes that they have to use it, it could really fall apart pretty quickly. Just some references where we got information at, things like that. Again, going back into that plan for activation, notification, who you're going to notify, when you're going to notify them. Here's just a whole list of definitions that when whoever it is flipping through this plan, they don't know what the term is that I'm using, they can flip to this section and figure it out and then continue reading. So that pretty much concludes the PowerPoint portion of this. So now I'm just going to hand out a template worksheet for group session, and these templates worksheets are also available to anybody on the internet at several different agencies like FEMA. And we're just going to pick a fictitious company and see what kind of continuity plan you can design, and then kind of go over them and see how well you did. Yeah.
So is a business continuity plan kind of run into the same thing as an emergency operation plan as far as how they're set up, and then you just like put the business portion of it into it versus maybe saving a bunch of people?
Yeah. The COOP, the presentation that I gave kind of stressed more on the emergency management kind of aspect of it, just because that's what I'm used to doing, but it works kind of the same for the business management as well. It's still a survival sort of thing. It's a plan put together to make sure that your company survives whatever you encounter. Make sure that you have a plan to keep going and you're not just kind of winging it when something does occur that needs attention right now.
If it's a chain business, do you have to get permission from a corporate office, or can you work with the individual stores to set up their business continuity?
For the most part, a chain company like that is going to have one overall continuity plan, and then you're going to have to get into it a little bit specifically for the type of environment that's in. So each region in like the United States, the continuity plan is going to be a little bit different because you're going to be facing you're at higher risk for certain things that other stores aren't. So it's overall going to be the same plan with just some slight changes in there depending on what region it's in. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, thank you.